Hello and welcome to the second part of my guide on how to build your real-time LED Ambilight style system. So in part one we went through all the parts that you needed, roughly how they plug together. So we'll assume that at this point you've got them all plugged in. So I'm going to tell you now how we are actually going to set up the Raspberry Pi itself, how we're going to install the software, and how we're going to configure the software so it works correctly with your lights and the particulars of your lights. So I will get your SD card and we need to insert that into your PC or laptop or Mac, whatever it is you've got, and we are going to first of all install the image file onto that. Now in the bottom of the YouTube video you should see this link. This is the link to the image file, so we're just going to go in and download that. It's quite a big link, well not a big link, it's quite a big file. There we go, 700 megabytes, so let's just download that. Now I'm not going to make you sit and watch this downloading, so I'm going to stop the video right here straight away. I'm going to come back in a few minutes time when that's downloaded. I'll see you then. Okay, so the file from Mega Upload should have now downloaded for you, hopefully. Well, it probably won't have downloaded now because I imagine there's about a 5-second gap between me saying I'm going and coming back. But a couple of hours have passed in my world. So the file that you're looking for is this one here, the Raspberry MC with fushikai.image.zip. Extract that out and you should get the Raspberry MC with fushikai.image file. If I haven't mentioned it already, which I can't remember if I did, Fushikai is the model of EasyCap USB grabber stick that I've used as part of my setup. There is only 2 models that are compatible with the Raspberry MC. Oh, excuse me. We've got the Fushikai USB grabber, and then there's another one, the STK 1600. So the one you will probably get now if you're buying these EasyCap USB grabbers is the Fushikai one. But there are web resources dedicated to these devices if you need to find out more about it. Certainly if you're buying a package from the library website you will get a compatible EasyCap stick. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually write that image file to the SD card, which should be an 8GB one. If you're using OS X, we're going to be using a piece of software called the Apple Pi Baker, which is just here. Oh, excuse me again. I'm just going to download that. There we go. There we go. And it's going to download there. Open that one up. Just need to type in your administrator password. And that's going to bring us to a piece of software that looks roughly like this. So all you do is you check your SD card there. If it's not showing up, just refresh it or make sure it's plugged in. If you've got any other SD cards or USB sticks plugged in at the time, just make sure that you are selecting the correct one. Then we're going to click on image file, and we're just going to find the file that we've downloaded, the image file there. I'm going to open that up and I'm just going to click restore backup. Okay, so that's going to do some stuff and it's going to bake it to the SD card. So that will take a little while too. Whilst that's doing that, for your Windows users, I'm just going to show you the piece of software that you'll be using. Very similar. That is a piece of software called Win32 Disk Imager, which, again, if we Google it, Win32 Disk Imager, there we go, which is just here. You'll download that from this website and it should open up very similar to this. So what you'll have is device, you'll be able to click that and choose your SD card from the drop down box, and then this little folder icon, you need to navigate to the image file we've downloaded, and then all you'll do is click write, and that will just take a little while to fill up, and come the end of it you should be in the same position that we will be in with our Apple Pi Baker, which this is saying is going to take 2 or 3 minutes. So again, I'm going to just pause the video here for myself, and I will come back and carry on very shortly. Back again. So your image file should now be totally written to your SD card. And I suppose now is the exciting bit. This is the moment of truth. What we're going to do is we're going to go plug the SD card into our Raspberry Pi, and we are going to power it up. There's no off or on switch on the Raspberry Pi. It's either plugged in or it's not. So we're going to plug it in, turn it on and power it up. What should hopefully happen is what I'm going to show you now. There's my Xbox on. I plugged in the Raspberry Pi, and at the moment it's just booting up in the background. And all being well, there we are. Exciting. That's your lights working. So we have now done the bulk of the installation. Now for me, the actual image file is all configured for my television and where my lights are positioned. But obviously what you're going to want to do is actually set it up for your television, because you may have a bigger television or you may have a smaller one, or you may have placed the lights in slightly different places. But what you should certainly see, once it's done its little rainbow animation, you might see some other coloured lights appear, some blue lights, and then all being well, you should see some lights come on. And actually what you'll see is that those lights are actually responding to whatever's being passed through it at this point. So again, it may not necessarily match up, but you will hopefully see some moving lights. If you're watching television, if you're on your Xbox or PS4 dashboard, then again, hopefully those lights that are lit up should correspond roughly with some of the stuff that's going on screen. So that's all pretty exciting. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually configure the Raspberry Pi for your TV. So what we're going to need for that is to go to the Hyperion website. So Hyperion is actually the software that's driving all of this. So I'm going to go to this web address here, which I've posted at the bottom of the video. And we are going to download the configurator, which is just under configuration. So this is a really useful website, obviously, if you need instructions on how to work the Hyperion software, or maybe you need some help. So some places on here you can ask questions. So we're going to download this hypercon.jar, and that should download somewhere. This actually requires Java to work. So if you haven't got Java, you just need to go to java.com. Oops. There we go. And you'll do a free Java download, and you'll install or follow the instructions to have it on your system. That's pretty straightforward. Once you've got that installed, everything should work really well. So what we're going to open is we're going to get this little jar file. I'm going to click on that, and then it's going to tell us that this is a unsafe file, and we are now into the actual configuration for your lights. So we're going to create a configuration file here. So I'm just going to talk you through the settings. Right, so what we're going to do is first of all, you're going to pick your actual lights that you've got. So if you've used one of the generic DIY lighting sets, you obviously pick the appropriate one there. If you've used the Library ones, which is what I'm using, click that one there. If you've got a light pack or something else, obviously just pick the appropriate one. So I'm going to pick the Library, which is what I'm using. You can leave that as it is. If you're using a Library and you're all powered, we can actually do that at 1,000,000, I believe. RGB byte order is RGB, so the Library's lights are set up with red, green and blue, and the signals are being sent out to that are all assuming that it's RGB. If you do boot it up, if you're using one of the other systems and your colours seem a bit back to front for some reason, then it may be that you need to pick one of the other versions. I'm going to pick RGB. Now we're actually going to set up how we've constructed or stuck together our lights around our television. So first of all, we're going to say whether the lights are going clockwise around the screen or anti-clockwise. So on mine actually start in the bottom left and go clockwise around the screen. You've got the option here to choose whether you've actually got lights in the very top corner, in the very bottom corner. I don't think mine actually does. I think I couldn't get the cables in a way which was good for them to have them at such right angles, so I'm going to have mine at false. You can choose exactly how many lights you've got along the top and along the bottom, so I can't recall exactly. I want to say I've got about 14 along there, and I think I've got about 7 up and down. So each one of these squares that's highlighted here is an individual LED. What you can also do here, depending on your setup, is you can tell it that you've not got lights in a particular place. So maybe you've got a stand, or maybe you didn't have enough lights to go all the way around the screen. And you can set a gap there. And then the first one here, the first LED offset, what this does is this repositions the lights. So the first light that the system sees, so this needs to be the first light on your string from the plug end, I suppose, the plug end that goes into your library is light number 0. So on mine that starts around about here, and then it counts up around the outside of the screen. Let me just give them, because I do have them there. There we go. So they go all the way around my screen, like so. So it's saying there I've got 42 lights. I believe I've actually got 40. No, I have got 42, that is right. Yeah, so they go all the way around like that. We've got some other things here. We've got image processing percentage. So basically what you're going to tell software here is how much of the image that the Raspberry sees, so whatever it is you see on your screen, is the software looking at to calculate the overall colour that it sees. So if you want it to be super accurate with just a tiny row of pixels at the bottom of your screen and match the lights there, you would set it very low like that. If you want it to kind of perhaps capture more of the overall mood of what's happening on the outside of the screen, then we'll pick a larger percentage. If you wanted to capture the overall colour of a big chunk of the screen, then we can tell it that we want to look at more. So again, this will depend on your overall preferences, your overall setup. Again, it depends on how much you want these lights changing as well. I think I've got mine around about 10, 11, 12%, something like that on mine. That seems to work quite well for my games, because it gives me the impression that the lights are seeing things beyond the outside of the screen. And it also means that if I'm playing a first-person shooter like Titanfall or Call of Duty or Halo or any other game where you've got hit indicators going on, the lights will light up appropriately as you get shot and you're bloody. The screen will all go red, which is quite cool in itself. So I have mine around about there. You've obviously got the same option here horizontally. I think again I've kept mine similar there. And then also you've got the option just to reposition those lights. So you might actually deliberately want it to ignore the very outside of the screen. You may want to do that if you find once you've got it up and running that you're getting strange interference and lights flickering and things. It could be that it's picking up things in the image that shouldn't be there. It may be that if you're using this as a movie setup and you know that most of the films that you're watching have black bars, you could also set it higher up to give it a more accurate measurement. But there is a setting for that which we will mention anyway. So again, there's various settings here that change what it's looking at, and again you can set an overlap there, so again just to help it average out the settings correctly. So that's all pretty straightforward there. Again, there's a lot of trial and error, and I quite enjoyed tweaking these settings until I got them right. We're just going to untick this frame grabber box because that is outdated and we don't need that. Now, there's something here called smoothing, which I've got turned on mine, and I've got it set to linear smoothing, which was the only option. What we have got is two settings here, the time in milliseconds and the update frequency. So what this is the software will actually smoothly change the colour between what it's seeing on screen. So, for example, if the screen flashed from bright white to bright, well, not bright, to black on the screen, or if we took two colours, for example, if we had a red screen and then very, very quickly it changed to a green screen, without smoothing turned on, you get an instantaneous change from red to green. Now, what I actually found is that this is actually a little bit jarring, and particularly if you're playing a game, you've got a hell of a lot of movement going on around the outside of the screen, so much so that it's distracting. This is what I found anyway. You may not agree, you might prefer to have it turned off. What we can actually do is we can set a little bit of smoothing, so that will actually create a small transition between any two colours that the lights are changing between. So I actually have mine set down to, I believe, around about 70, I think, or 90, something like that. Under 100 anyway, that seems to be tolerable for me. And then I've got my update frequency set to 30 Hertz, because actually that's the frequency of the video that the grabber is seeing. So although your game will obviously be maybe more than that, it might be 60 frames a second, the hardware works better with a 30 Hertz input. So we're just going to click 30 there. So have a play with that, see what works best for you. Like, as I said, I found that lower numbers of smoothing, where the smoothing happens a lot quicker, was a little bit disorientating, and again, you maybe didn't capture the mood of what was going on screen. You just got a very, very rapidly changing set of pixels on your walls behind you, which I didn't really enjoy. So that's that. We've also got some other settings here that we can do. So we've got our actual colour, threshold, gamma, black level and white level settings for the LEDs individually too. So what you can do here is, first of all, the threshold, and it's talking about the red lights, the green lights and the blue lights. Now obviously any colour that you see, whether it's yellow or pink or purple or turquoise, whatever, those colours, or even the white, is all produced from those three coloured LEDs. Now, the first setting, threshold, that controls just how much of a particular colour does I can't think what I'm saying, does the grabber have to recognise before it turns those lights on. So, for example, if you have got a black screen on the television, or you've got a very, very dark scene, it might be a very, very, very dark blue. But you might actually think that it's better that if you've got something very, very dark on screen, you would rather just have those lights turned off. This is how I've actually got mine set up. If I've got something that's essentially black on the sides of the screens, I want those lights to be off. I want to create contrast. So if we're in a dark scene and somebody's shining a torch, I don't want light shining out the back of my television. I just want light shining out where the torch is. So what we're going to do is I'm going to increase that threshold a little bit. You can try it on 0.2 maybe to start with. And what that will mean is the on-screen image will have to reach a certain brightness before those lights even become active. Higher numbers means that the lights have, well, the on-screen image has to be brighter before they kick in. It might be, again, that you sometimes get a little bit of interference. You might find that when you're on a very dark screen, you for some reason get random coloured lights flashing behind your TV, red ones for example. It might be that you want to make the software a little bit less sensitive to the colour red. So you can adjust the threshold on a particular colour channel or all of them all together. Again, if you aren't as familiar with this, if you have a look at the configuration file that I'll provide you with a link for that I use on my television, you can maybe just use the settings that I've got set up. In fact, what I'll do is I'll post those settings at the bottom of the video, so again, if you want to copy them, you can do. Your gamma controls the overall brightness for any particular no, it's not actually to lights a gamma curve. So again, these are a little bit more complicated now. So have a play with these numbers. If you've got an Android phone, you can actually download the Hyperion app, and you can actually change these in real time, and you can adjust them up and down, see what difference they make to what's going on screen, and then you can make a note of those and you can enter them directly into this configuration file. A couple of other settings there. You've got a control for the saturation, so that will basically make things more colourful, and you've got a control for the value and the value gain, and again, I'm not a super expert on all these terms, to be honest. That seems to make the light overall brighter. So again, have a play, see what works best for you. I'm sure some people will like the lights to be, you know, very, very vivid and everything to be super colourful. My own personal preference is I want these colours to as closely match what's going on screen. But again, your own lighting conditions within your room will have an effect on this. If you've got very good lighting or you're playing in the daytime, you may want to have the saturation turned up so you can see more of the colour around the outside of the screen. Again, down to you. So have a play with those settings and see what they do and see how they work and see what works best for you. External ones, we don't actually need any of these. Let's turn those off. And that is it. So all we will do here is we're going to create Hyperion configuration, and that's going to create a configuration file wherever we place it on the desktop. It's more specific to your setup, but then also with your colour preferences as well. And that's going to create it. Oh, where is it? Has it created it? It's going to create it somewhere, wherever you've chosen to put it. I'll just have a look at mine. What have I done with it? Oh, it looks like this. I'm just going to put that one on my desktop for now. Okay, so we've actually created a configuration file a little bit more specific to our setup, and what we need to do now is upload that file onto the Raspberry Pi. Almost there. Okay, so it's all pretty exciting now. We've got lights on, hopefully. They'll be changing roughly in correspondence with some of the stuff that's going on the screen. But we need to upload that configuration file that we've made that's more specific to you into the Raspberry Pi itself, onto the SD card. So we're going to need to log in with a client of some kind. If you know how to get the IP address of your Raspberry Pi from your router settings, or via another method, then by also do so, because we're going to need that. If you don't, if you're a new person to all of this, we're going to download a piece of software called the Angry IP Scanner, which is just here, because we're going to need this IP address. I'm going to click on download. If you're on Windows, we're going to download the Windows one. If you're on OS X, we're going to download the OS X one. If you're on Linux, then you probably don't need this guide, to be honest. So we're going to just download that there. Bam. Taking its time. There we go. Angry IP Scanner, let's open that up. Should look about the same on Windows or on OS X. If you're on OS X, we're just going to go to the little Windows logo. I'm going to go to, not the Windows logo, the Apple logo. I'm going to go to System Preferences. I'm going to go to Sharing. I'm going to go to File Sharing and turn it on if it's not ticked. I'm going to go to Options, and you're going to just tick the box next to your account name. It might ask for your password, just fill it in. And click Done. Okay, so that's your main Mac password that you use when you log in, or your main keychain password, I think it calls it. Okay, so we've turned that on. We'll just need that to help pick this out. So we go back to the Angry IP Scanner. On Windows, you won't need to do that step, nothing like that. And we're just going to click Start. And what that will do is that'll scan your network for all of the devices that are connected. So we should be able to see your router. You see this one here, XBMC. You can see my Xbox and my iPhone. You can see this one. I'm still not entirely sure what that is, but it's something. My Mac, some other bits and pieces anyway. So that's there. But one we're actually interested in is this one called the XBMC. So that's actually the Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi is actually running Xbox Media Center, which you may be familiar with the name. It's running Xbox Media Center, and it's using the Hyperion software at the same time. So actually this one here, XBMC, that is the IP address that we're going to be using. So just make a note of that, whatever yours might be. And we are going to go and change some passwords and start getting things set up. So if you're on Windows, the next bit we're going to do is we're going to look for something called Putty, which you can download from putty.org. You're going to download that, and that's going to bring you to something that hopefully looks something like this. And what you're going to do is, in this box where it says host name, you're going to type in that IP address we just looked up. So in my case, it was 192.168.0.2. We're going to make sure this little SSH box is clicked, and we are going to click open. And that should be all that you need to do. What that will do is that will open a window that looks something like, well, it looks very, very similar to this. It'll be a different colour, it'll probably be black. If you're on OS X, we're going to look for terminal, which you should be able to find there when you're at Mac somewhere, terminal. And it's going to bring us to a window like this. Now, if you're on the Mac, we just need to get it to the same point that the Windows users are at the moment. Windows users, if it asks you for a password and username, we will tell you what that is in just a second. So if you're on OS X, we're just going to type in SSH. We're going to type in, what is it? It's pi at 192.168.0.2. So that's my IP address, or whatever your IP address is. Now if I press enter, what that should do, oh, it's logged in. It's caused a little problem for me. I just need to change the setting. Shouldn't do the momentary hiccup just there. Should be able to type in SSH space pi at your IP address, my one's 192.168.0.2. It'll probably say to you something along the lines of this, and it says, "Sure you want to continue?" I'm just going to type in yes. And it's going to ask you for the password. The password is raspberry. Okay, so we logged in. For the Windows users, when you clicked open on Putty, it should have said log in as, you want to log in as the user Pi, which is what we've done. And then when it asks you for the password, you'd log in with the password raspberry. The same as us. And then you should be pretty much in exactly the same place. What we're just going to do now is we're going to set a root password. So I think in order to do that, we type, what is it? Sudo pass, is it P word? Password. Oh no. Close. Let's Google that. I've forgotten the password. So we're going to do change password in terminal. There we go. See that? I have to Google these things. Because I don't really know much about terminal, or well, when I say much, I know nothing. I've had to learn how to do this all myself, but I have done this before and I have now forgotten. It is that one there, password. Right, so we're just going to go back to this. Hopefully you haven't quit out. Let's just log in again. 168.2. Password is raspberry. And right, so what we should be able to type is sudo password, and then I think if you type in root, is that right? Right, so we're going to type in sudo password root, just like it is on screen there. And it's going to ask you for a new password. So you can use whatever password you want to use, whatever you might normally use. So I'm just going to type in password. I'll ask you for it again. There we go, so it's updated the main password. So that's what we call the root password. So I think the root is basically the equivalent of like the administrator, so that is like the master account. And for the sake of this tutorial, this is going to be the easiest way for us to transfer the files that we need to transfer. So we're done with this now. We can close terminal and you can close Putty as well. Next up is actually transferring the file. Now we've got all of our details, we're going to download a piece of software called CyberDuck. And we're going to go to the CyberDuck website, cyberduck.io, and we're going to download CyberDuck for your platform. So I'm going to download that one there. It's a free download, same on Windows as it is on OS X. So again, for the sake of these videos, trying to make it all as even as possible, just to make it easy to follow. As I appreciate, it's probably more people watching this on a Windows computer than a Mac. And we're going to open up CyberDuck, and that should run, and should look something like, come on, something like this. There we go. Right, so almost there. We click on Open Connection. This box here, we're going to choose the one, this one here, SFTP server. We're going to put in our Raspberry Pi's IP address, which is the same as before. Username, this time we're not going to use the Pi username, we're going to use root. So this is, like I said, the kind of administrator password, and the password, whatever you've used, whatever we set in the previous stage. And we're going to just click connect, fingers crossed. There we are, we're in. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the folder where we need that file to be. So we're going to go into this one. We've got this one here, etc. And we're going to go in there. And somewhere in here, beginning with H, we've got a file that looks very much like the one that we've created earlier on. So you may have guessed it now. What we're going to actually do is we're going to overwrite that file. If you want to have a look at it, you can click on Edit, go to your text editor, whatever you might use, and you can actually see the settings I use with my television. So as I was saying, you might want to look at the colour settings that I've got set up. Oh, actually, those aren't my settings. Those must be generic ones, so ignore that. So we've got a folder. We want to replace this file. We've got our file that we've created, and quite simply, just going to drag that, and I'm guessing it's going to ask us if we want to overwrite it, which it hasn't done. How annoying. Right, what we'll do then is we're going to scroll up to the top to the folder by name, and I'm going to try dragging it onto that folder. Let's try that instead. Ah, there we go. Right, it's done it that time. So you need to drag it onto the folder name. And it's asking us if we want to overwrite that file. And we are just going to click continue. Bam. It's just uploaded that file. So we're in. We've got our settings in. And about now, you should have something that's pretty much working. What you'll need to do, for those new settings to take effect, you'll need to reboot your Raspberry Pi, which you can do either by unplugging it, or, I believe, if you've got CyberDuck open, you go to send command, and I think you can type in reboot. Might be wrong. No, I am wrong. There is a command. Maybe you can Google it, how to restart a Raspberry Pi. And you can type it in there, and anyway, that will reboot the system, and that will load in your new file, and hopefully you'll see those settings that correspond a little bit better. So at this point, it's just a case of trial and error. You want to have a play, see if you can get it matching up with what you've got on screen. You might be, well, it might be a sensible idea to find some static images or some test patterns, or again, just looking at something static like dashboard on your console, and then you can adjust the settings from that point. That's sometimes a little bit easier rather than trying to tweak it with moving images and moving colours around the outside of the screen. But that should be it. Just trying to think if there's anything else I need to suggest. What I would suggest is, once you have got a mostly working configuration for your television, so you got it to the point where I suppose the lights are in the correct place and it works, what I would do is create a backup of your SD card. So you can do that with the Apple Pi Baker, where is he? Or your Win32 disk imager. On the Raspberry Pi one, what you do instead is you do create backup. And what that'll do is that'll just create a file on your computer, just like my image file. And it just means that if you ever change a setting and you somehow break your setup, you don't have to go through everything again to make it work. That will save you a lot of time, and that is something that I learned as I was tweaking colours and changing things. It's very, very easy to accidentally click space, put a comma where somewhere it doesn't need to go, and you'll break it, and it just won't boot properly. So you'll have to start from scratch and go through all the processes again. So yeah, create a backup once you've got it into a good place. As I said as well, if you need to look at a particular configuration file, so if we want to look at the file that we've created, you might want to edit it manually outside of the Hyperion config software. You can just open it in a text editor, and you can browse through the file, and you can make the tweaks to it. And there's various pieces of tweakery that you can play with there, including a useful one which I didn't see a setting for in the configurator. That's something called the black border detector. So what that does is basically if you're watching a film and you've got black borders at the top and the bottom of the screen, normally Hyperion will assume that those black borders are always there, and as a result the lights at the top and the bottom of the screen won't display any colour. They'll just go black, or whatever colour you've got kind of set for black. What we actually want to do is we maybe want to set it on about 0.2, and what it will do is over a period of time, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, if it sees black in any one point on the screen, around the edge of the screen, it will automatically ignore that black and it will look at the colour on the inside of it. So again, if you're watching a film, it just means that you'll get your top and bottom lights running. Again, you may not want that. You may just want the colours to come out the side or whatever, but that's there for you. Wouldn't pay too much attention to this file because it is slightly different, because it's a slightly different configuration for something else. At the bottom here, I've also got a few other settings that we can tweak. So if you find that the lights are being a bit jerky or doing some other strange things, again, I'd maybe look at just making sure that these numbers here match up. That is pretty much it. If you've got this far, you're pretty much sorted. Just have a play and see what you think. If this video has been useful for you, I'd really appreciate it if you clicked like or left me a comment. It's always nice to get, nice comments, I suppose. If it's a mean one, I'll just delete it. But it's always good to get comments. Also, if you need any help, if I haven't been clear with anything in the video, yeah, just post in the comments and I'll do my best to reply and help you out. As I'm hoping that you'll really enjoy your new lights. It's really cool. It's probably the most exciting thing I have bought as an accessory for my games consoles ever. I genuinely love it to bits, and I really encourage you, if you've got some spare time and a bit of spare money, I reckon this has cost me around about £150 all in, and that's including all my cables, my cable tidy, my SD card, and some other bits and pieces. I'm sure if you bought the pieces individually or bought them from elsewhere or made your own lights, then you could probably shave some extra cash off that as well. That's about $200, I think. But yeah, really worthwhile. Really like it, and it really adds to me just watching television or watching a film or playing a game. It's really cool. So yeah, hope you liked it, and yeah, need anything, drop me a message. Thanks.